It was a warm, beautiful summer's day in New York City. And even though it was 10 a.m., I was at Dempsey's Pub on the Lower East Side. Despite the time of day, however, the bar was packed to the rafters. There were around 100 people, all rubbing shoulders and holding beers. The reason we were all there was to watch the USA play Algeria for a place in the knockout rounds of the 2010 World Cup. The game was tied 1-1 as it approached added time.
Howard gratefully claims it. Distribution, brilliant. Landon Donovan, there are things on here for the USA. Can they do it here? Crossed, and Dempsey's denied again, and Donovan has scored! Oh, can you believe this? Go, go, USA! Certainly through! Oh, it's incredible!
Like everyone else around me, I lost my mind. Around the United States, millions more did too. The moment was captured in a viral video that featured pubs from Lincoln to Las Vegas. Close your eyes and you can probably think of a similar moment from your own life. You see, football and pubs, they just go together. But that might soon change. Due to the contagious nature of the coronavirus, companies in the hospitality sector have been among the worst hit. Today, we speak with a pub operator to find out how his pub is being impacted by the coronavirus, and we examine why hundreds of other pubs might go out of business.
Hi Josh, nice to speak to you. It's Martin Whelan. I'm from the Tollington, the main Arsenal pub just up from the Emirates Stadium. We're 5 minutes away. Obviously at the moment we're shut because of the coronavirus. I'm missing all my Arsenal family at the moment. We are the main pub. We opened 2 weeks before the Emirates opened in 2006. And obviously we didn't see this blip coming, but it's troubling times obviously at the moment. None of us know whether the Premier League is going to be finished, where Arsenal are going to end up, what's going to happen in the summer with transfers. So it is like a 0-0 draw at the moment, to be quite truthful.
Since he was a teenager, Martin has worked in pubs. And now he's been running the Tollington for nearly 15 years.
Before we moved to the Tollington, I took the Gunners. I had the main pub at Highbury. So I had the Gunners on Blackstock Road. And then I was approached in late 2004. And there was this boarded up shack of a place on Hornsey Road. It was a shithole, to be quite honest with you.
So when Arsenal built their new stadium in 2006, Martin built his new pub. And ever since it opened, the Tollington has been a landmark for Arsenal fans throughout London. The pub regularly hosts Arsenal-themed events, such as book signings, and it is a go-to spot for fans before a match. Game days there can get a bit crazy.
When Arsenal play at home, say if it was a Saturday at 3 o'clock, we open at 11. It's obviously home fans only. And then, you would usually either have an early game, say 1:15. You'll always have a game on TV, on BT Sports or Sky Sports before it. And we just get rammed. It gets pedestrianised outside the pub. So if they're all walking from Finsbury Park or the locals or whatever, we just get in. So we would get rammed up to 10 minutes before the game. Then, everybody comes back 10 to 5. 15, 20 minutes, you're full back up to 700 again capacity, and then it thins out.
So how big is football to your business? Like what percentage of the revenue, how much money do you kind of make, a rough estimate maybe, on those game days or, via football?
Football, once the fixture list comes out, it dictates everything. Football is like our Bible. So, and then obviously it comes out. Then, you wait a week, 10 days until the fixtures are actually set. We would take 3 weeks turnover, and every 3 weeks turnover we would take in one game. there. So obviously you have a hell of a lot more, you've got security, you've got a hell of a lot of staff or whatever. But yeah, without football there, myself and other pubs around there, I'm not saying we would struggle. We wouldn't, you wouldn't have that. That's the cream on the cake, really, because we've got a Sobel Sports Centre straight directly across from the Tollington. So a lot of them they all drink in our place. That's outside of football, but with the football, it would be, you do 3 weeks turnover roughly on a Saturday or a Sunday.
So it's kind of the lifeblood of the pub.
On the financial side, yes, it is that.
Yeah. So I want to take it back to March when coronavirus really took off here in the UK in terms of cases and kind of responses to cases. When did it first become kind of clear to you that this might have a big impact on your business?
We've more than one bar, and what actually happened with COVID-19 was we had one bar in particular that a lot of students used, a lot of foreign students just up the road from the Tollington. We opened a new bar, just my luck, but we opened it on the 16th of December. And we had just barely got it open, and we had a couple of home games, a couple of Arsenal home games just on the run up to Christmas. But strangely enough, then all the foreign students went home for the Christmas and whatever, but the accommodation then never ever filled up. We had 72 apartments above the pub. And the accommodation then never filled up. So it took me a week or two to realise, hang on, what the hell is going on here? How come the students haven't come back? The foreign students, And it was towards the end of January, I'm thinking, hang on a minute, this is actually affecting central London. Now, the government, British government or nothing, there wasn't a squeak out of them about this at the moment, as though, oh, hang on, it's at the other side of the world, not our problem. And I'm thinking, well, it's actually kind of my problem because, I've actually based this new bar, which I say was only 5 minutes walk from the Tollington. So I was probably on it. End of January, start of February, and things weren't getting better. And then from the beginning of March, there was nobody in the pubs. It was like drip, drip, drip every evening. It was getting worse. It was just beginning to hit the news. And I had actually drafted up stuff that we were going to shut that Friday anyway.
We are collectively telling cafes, pubs, bars and restaurants to close tonight as soon as they reasonably can and not to open tomorrow.
So when he announced that, what was your reaction in terms of, okay, what happens next kind of after that?
I was okay with it, but obviously, in theory, we got 6 hours to lock up. So he announced to say 5:30, 6 o'clock. That was it, midnight, whatever, we all, you lock it all up. And then I went around then on the Saturday and I spoke to the managers. We don't know whether it was going to be at the time. It was a 3-week lockdown. I said, it'll take us another week. So at the time, nobody knew any different because we didn't have the knowledge that we have now. The staff obviously were shell-shocked, as you know, like with some permanent staff and then the part-time staff. And then some of the part-time staff were saying, we were out on Friday night. So they were all, bevied up. Then they wake up with Saturday morning with a hangover and thinking, hang on, we ain't got a pub to go to. They were out partying on the Friday. And then they just suddenly drop, well, hang on, we haven't got a party to go to, but we haven't got a job to go to in midweek either. It took a week, I'd say, not from that Friday, from that Monday, I'd say it took another week then for the penny to drop. Hang on, like we are actually in a bit of, we're in deep shit here.
Can you discuss the financial fallout from your pub since it was closed?
Basically, it was a forced closure on us. Nobody thought about the finance. The finances was basically first is health, then the penny starts dropping. Hang on, next week or, you pay your rent either monthly or quarterly in advance. So obviously 16, 17, 20th of March, and next thing, after 3 or 4 days, people are thinking, hang on, we've got to pay the next quarterly's rent on the 1st of April. even though Johnson had said that he'd written and instructed to all the commercial landlords to basically to waiver the next 3 months, and in turn they would write then to finances and all. So any of the commercial lenders wouldn't pull the plug. You got all the big bankers like Barclays, NatWest and all, giving all these big spiels. Oh yeah, we're not going to come in on the landlords. Which then in turn the landlords were meant to then pass on to the lessees. Now that hasn't happened. They haven't cancelled the rent, Josh. They've deferred the rent. So EI, Enterprise Inns, Punch Taverns, Green King, the big players on the tenanted side. So they've deferred the rent and they're waiting on government guidance. Now obviously, I'm on a free Thai lease. My rent there, like I need 120 grand a year. So say I had a 6-month closure, I've got a landlord screaming for £60,000 worth of rent.
Wait. So to be clear to the audience, you're independent, though. You are not one of these pubcos where you're leasing it from Green King.
No.
You're from a private landlord.
Yeah. So basically, the Tollington, all our bars, we have no tie-in to the breweries. So we've all got free Thai leases from commercial investors. Some of the landlords are understanding, others are not. Then we lobbied to the Morning Advertiser in UK Hospitality. Then we got onto the government about the rates. So the business rates, that's a massive, because that's unrateable value. Say the business rates in the Tollington, 70 grand a year. The business rates on the Big Red 5 minutes away is 97,500 a year. Then you've got the knock-on going back to sport. Sky Sports is based on rateable value. BT Sport is based on rateable value. Amazon that they brought in at Christmas, that's based on rateable value. Premier Sports, and I have those 4 commercial packages. They're all based on it, but we eventually got all the TV companies. They've been quite good. There's no live sport. They've cut that. Then in the period from, say, the 20th of March up to the 1st of April, from the governments to the council then, we got the business rates suspended, which is fine. Then the government announced that they would give small business loans, SMEs, of up to 25,000 per pub. But that only covers small business. Our bars are not covered in it because anything over 51,000, you don't get a penny. We don't qualify for that. I can't actually claim anything myself because I'm a director of my own company. The problem with business rates in pubs is the more turnover you are, it's based on turnover. Like if you do shop, if you have a carpet shop, you're based on square meters. If you have a pub, it's based on retrospective turnover. So the more money you take, the more money you're charged on your rateable value. All the most successful pubs over the 51 grand rateable value, they're not getting a penny. Not a bloody bean.
So when you went to your landlord of the Tollington, what did they say?
I asked, like everybody else, was for the 3-month deferral until it was worked out, and we would adhere to the government. We're instructed by the government because the government has just shut us down. All of us, him included. His commercial lenders have agreed, for instance, all the commercial lenders have agreed, no, nobody will be touched for 3 months. But he wrote back to me and said, no, that's an unacceptable proposal. And I said, well, what do you expect me to do? How do you expect this money to be taken in? And basically said, well, you dip into your savings. I said, well, why should I dip into my savings when you, as a commercial landlord, have just been, you've had a 3-month waiver?
Yeah.
But we're with lawyers.
If you have to pay and you don't get that 3-month deferral, what does that mean for your pub?
Well, 2 ways of looking at it. There isn't a judge or a court in the land will enforce a law within the 3 months because the government have shut us. Doesn't matter what these wealthy landlords do. Bluntly, I've told them this. Do your worst. Bring me to court. But there isn't a court in the land is going to overrule the government. It's different if you or I or somebody have done something, you've been negligent on something or anything like that. But if it's a government order, let's work it out. Let's do a deferral on it This is what we've done with several of the other landlords, and we've done it up till the 1st of April of next year on the next financial year.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist or an accountant to know this. If you weren't trading for 3 months in a financial year, say from the 1st of April 20 to 31st of March 2021, if there's 3 months in there and you've to pay within that period, say a 3-month commercial rent, but you've no turnover or no figures to justify it, that's glorified false accounting. So basically, if that has got to be delayed, and that's what was presented to the government yesterday as well about the deferral, which makes a common sense. If pubs are shut for 6 months, it is deferred to the end of your lease. It doesn't cost the British government a penny. You know, you just add a 6-month period. Say you had 10 years left in your lease, for instance. You would have 10 years and 6 months. The landlord would have 10 years and 6 months, who in turn would get an extra 6 months. And it can be done on the stroke of a pen, that can be done. What they don't realise, and the penny hasn't dropped, is this whole country, when you see the like of, say, Burger King and all them coming out yesterday and during the week and saying, none of them, they haven't paid their rents either. Because they simply cannot do it. If this goes on, like if you say, if this was shut between up to September, that's the April quarter missed, the 1st of June quarter missed, the 1st of September quarter missed. That's 9 months commercial rent. Yeah? So divide 120, so that's 30, 60, 90. Where am I going to get 90 grand to give to a landlord on a locked up pub? But I'm not the only person. So what I'm saying is, this will come down from government. It has to, because if not, it'll just end up like Beirut. All the pubs, you'll have nobody in them. There'll be no furlough for the staff because we won't be there to furlough them. Everybody will be on the dole. And you'll have squatters in all these bars.
I'm Greg Mulholland, and I'm the chair of the British Pub Confederation, and that's the confederation of organisations representing pubs, publicans and pub campaigners, so very much the grassroots side of the sector as opposed to the corporate side, which are represented by other bodies. We actually represent the pubs, the people who run them and the people who care about them. The first thing to say is this is just an awful time for pubs and publicans. It's an awful time for everyone, and it's a real challenge to all of us as a society, as a country, and internationally, because of course this is something that really is bringing the whole of human nature together, or should be, and something we should be dealing with together. But in terms of pubs and publicans, to actually have a situation where they're unable to trade, where they're being told that they may not be able to open for months, when that is their income, that's their livelihood, as well as being very important for communities. That's devastating, and it's really hard to overestimate the impact of that and the possible consequences. You know, even during 2 world wars, our pubs in the United Kingdom steadfastly remained open. I mean, in the First World War, they were rather strangely, in a way, nationalised to a great extent and taken over by the government, and very much restricted, but still there, as they were recognised to be crucially important to all those people working hard in munitions factories and all the other things that needed to be done. And in the Second World War, the same. And of course, famous tales, some tragic, of pubs being destroyed in the Blitz with people drinking in them, and others of amazing stories of solidarity and defiance.
And yet, while pubs may have survived the wars, in recent decades, their numbers have been declining. In 2000, there were approximately 60,000 pubs in the United Kingdom, according to Statista. By 2018, that number would drop to around 47,000. One of the reasons is the rise of pubcos.
There are various factors, but a lot of it is directly because of the business model of the large companies, their exploitation of the traditional beer tie, the way that they have pushed up rents and beer prices to the stage where they're taking virtually all the profit from pubs. So it no longer became, I remember when I first started drinking back in the 80s, pub tenancies, then still with some, famous names, some brewing names that are no longer actually sadly with us, like Tetley's in Leeds, Bonington's in Manchester. Those tenants in pubs where, it was just a traditional pub and they really sold just bitter and lager, perhaps mild if you were lucky. Those tenants did very well back in the day. They had nice cars and they made a decent living. Then once the city boys got hold of the model after the beer orders in 1989 and really changed it out of all recognition, we had a situation where it became profiteering and it became a scam, and that's why we call it the Great British Pubco Scam. And it made it impossible for many, many publicans to take a fair share of their profit that they were earning from the pub. These are profitable pubs, but the person running it wasn't able to take a profit because of the huge sums being taken out both in the wet rent, the overcharge on the beer, and the dry rent, which was no longer at a low level to compensate for the higher beer prices, but actually has gone up and up and up compared with the freehold costs of running a pub. So, that has been directly responsible, and particularly when you look at what happened when, first of all, Punch Taverns and Enterprise Inns, they went on acquisition sprees, they were buying pubs up, and Punch were buying pubs at more than their value, considerably more than their listed value, and using foreign bonds to do so. The whole thing was really a property scam, and of course when the property market collapsed, suddenly they found themselves in debt. Punch were over £4 billion in debt, 4.5, I think, billion pounds in debt for around 9,000 pubs. Now you do the maths and you work out how much each Punch Tavern's pub at the time was in debt, and it was actually worth more. They owed more in debt on some of those pubs than that pub was actually worth on the property market.
And yet, despite receiving assistance from the government, many of these pubcos are asking their tenants for rent.
5 of those 6 companies have decided they're going to carry on charging rent. For any company to be saying, well, we're going to carry on charging you that amount of rent, it doesn't matter if they're saying it's deferred. In some ways, it's as bad saying it's deferred because, we don't know how long the pubs will be closed, but let's say they're closed for even only 3 months, and I think that will be about the shortest period we'll see them closed, I'm afraid. But even that, you're talking about £30,000 debt that you've then got to pay back from what are fairly tight margins. There is not a lot of money these days in a lot of wet-led, particularly tenanted and leased pubs. So it's simply not possible. It's just not realistic for people to rack up huge debts and then pay them off. And the pub companies know that. But frankly, they are putting their own interest, their own survival in some cases, because some of those companies are still in huge amounts of debt through their own reckless financial engineering over the years. But, when you've also got the largest pub owning company in the UK, Star Pubs and Bars, owned by Heineken, one of the very biggest beer brands in the world, a dominant force in global brewing. They make annual profits of, around £4 billion worldwide. And yet they are demanding that their tenants carry on paying rent to them. And that's scandalous. That shows, I'm afraid, what is wrong with the values of some of these companies. At the same time,